The only reason that I will be financially free before I turn 30 years old is because I'm extremely frugal. And everyone knows that if you want to be financially free yourself, you have to spend less money than you make. But as simple as this sounds, this is where I see the most people struggle. They know they need to spend less money to reach their financial goals, but they don't want to cut out the expenses that they love. And I used to feel the same way. I may be extremely frugal now, but that only happened after I learned the key lessons that I'm going to share in this video. So in this video, I'm going to explain the 4 E's of becoming more frugal and some super tactical strategies that you can use to save more money. But first, let me explain why being frugal is so important. When I was in high school, I was really struggling. I just couldn't envision a future in which I was happy. It just seemed so lame. And I remember looking at my parents and my relatives who were still working into their 50s and their 60s, and I just didn't want their lives. They just seemed so busy, and they had no time to do their hobbies or to build friendships or really do anything else. But my senior year of high school, my life pretty much changed. I stumbled across this website called the Mr. Money Mustache blog. Mr. Money Mustache lived life a little differently. He had a regular job in the tech industry, but instead of spending 90% of his income like everyone else was, he tried to save 65 to 80% of his income. So while everyone else was working until they're 65, Mr. Money Mustache decided to retire at 30. At that point in my life, I didn't even know that something like that was possible. So this was a profound moment for me. All of a sudden, I realized that I could live my life on my own terms. All of a sudden, I had something that I could look forward to. I knew that once I was financially free, I could spend my time doing whatever I wanted. And all it would take is being extremely frugal. So that's when I decided that I was going to retire even faster than Mr. Money Mustache. I was going to be financially free even before I turned 30 years old. And by the way, if you want to see a more detailed plan about how I'm going to do that, I put a free guide in the video description that you can just download, and I'll walk you through exactly how I'm going to retire before I turn 30 years old. But the point is, frugality can open up a completely new life. And for many people, this is the first hurdle. Because you will never have the discipline and the motivation to be extremely frugal if you don't have a reason to be extremely frugal. Your dream life will probably look a little different than mine. So this is the first action item. Actually ask yourself, why do you want to save more money? What would saving more money allow you to do? When you have this vision in mind, it is going to be so much easier to become frugal. But now, let me explain the 4 E's of building frugal habits and how I used this framework myself to start saving over 80% of my income every year. But to understand how the 4 E's framework works, you have to understand how a habit forms. And basically, there are 4 parts. First is the cue, which reminds you to do something in the first place. And second is the desire to actually do it. Third is the action of actually doing the habit. And fourth is the reward that you get for doing the habit. So to build good frugal habits, we have to focus on each of these 4 steps. And that's why the first E of the 4 E's framework is to make your habits exposed. At my company, we have to log our hours every day. And when I first started, this is something that I would forget all of the time. But this was never an issue because at the end of every day, I'd get an automated email reminding me to put in my hours. These automated reminders are the cue for the habit. They remind me to go in and log my hours at the end of the day. And these days, it's so second nature that I don't even need the reminders anymore. Whenever I'm getting close to the end of the day, I just remember to go in and log my hours. It is now a habit. And that is why it is so important to make your habits, or more specifically, the cue to start your habit, exposed. If you're trying to build a new habit, you want to make it impossible to avoid. If you don't do the habit, you want to make sure that you had to choose not to do the habit. not that you just forgot to do the habit. So if you're trying to build a habit of saving more money, then you want to make sure that you're constantly reminded of this. And the best thing to do here is to do whatever you would normally do to make sure that you don't forget something. So personally, I use a lot of calendar reminders. If I'm trying to remember to save $100 per week, then I would make a calendar reminder to say, hey, save $100 today. You can also automate this, but we'll come back to that later. And if you want to get in the habit of tracking your expenses, which I would highly recommend, then you can go into your bank and your credit card and you can set up automatic notifications whenever you buy something. So you'll get these reminders that you spent money, which will remind you to go and track your expenses. Again, the cue is exposed. And if you're trying to get out of a bad habit, then you want to do the exact opposite. You want to avoid anything and everything that would prompt you to spend your money. So for example, you might want to unfollow all of the social media accounts that make you want to buy something. And you might shop with the grocery list instead of just walking around and buying anything that looks good to you. And maybe you go into your inbox and you unsubscribe from all of the marketing emails that you get that are trying to get you to buy stuff. So reminding yourself of the habit is actually pretty easy. But another big problem is that even once you see the cue to do your habit, you might not want to actually do it. And that's why the second E of our framework is to make the habit exciting. Saving money probably doesn't seem that exciting, but you can make it fun. One of the ways that I save a ton of money every single year is by food prepping. I batch prepare all of my meals for the week at once, so I'm never tempted to go eat at a restaurant. Now, this does save me tons of money, like thousands of dollars per year. But the issue is that I don't really like cooking. And if you force yourself to do something that you don't like, then you start to resent it. And the last thing that I want is to start resenting something that saves me a bunch of money. So what I do is every time I'm doing my weekly meal prep, I call my parents, which is something I do like doing. So now cooking is something I look forward to. It's just an opportunity to stop working and just talk to people for a few hours. And the cooking is just sort of a background thing that I don't really have to think about. So this is one of the most powerful ways to make a habit something you look forward to. Try to pair it with something that you do enjoy. And there's also another way to make good financial habits very exciting. Because in the moment, maybe saving $5 doesn't seem like a big deal. So maybe you're tempted to just spend the money. But let's say you save just $1 today and $1 every single month from here on for the next 45 years. If you earn a 7% return, that turns into $3,558.66. So think about that. Every single time that you find a way to save just $1 per month, you could have an extra $3,500 by the time you retire. I don't know about you, but that gets me really excited. That is more than enough motivation to look for a lot of ways to reduce my expenses. But no matter how excited you are to do something, it will still be extremely difficult to build a habit if that habit is something that's extremely difficult. And this is actually where I think people make the biggest mistake. I call this the New Year's resolution problem. Most people set a super ambitious goal, and they want to turn into a completely different person just overnight. But that is not how habits actually form. To form a habit, you need practice and you need consistency to make it ingrained. If you set a super ambitious goal, you'll stop doing that habit as soon as your motivation dips, which it inevitably will. Because motivation looks something like this. Sometimes it's high, but sometimes it dips. But most people will set their goals at the height of their motivation. But that means as soon as their motivation goes down and they have just one bad day, they get out of the habit. So what you actually want to do is build a habit that you can still do even on your worst days. Even when your motivation is not there, what is something that you can still do? And that's why the third E is to make your habits easy, at least in the beginning. And this might mean starting way smaller than you think. Even if you think you might be able to save $25 per day, you might want to start with saving just $5 per day. The most important thing here is to get as many repetitions as possible, not to get the biggest, fastest results. Because the important thing is not how much money you're saving at the very start. The most important thing is that you build the habit of saving money consistently. Only once that habit feels extremely easy and automatic do you want to build on top of that habit and save more and more money. Now, there are a bunch of strategies that you can use to make saving money easy and to become extremely frugal. But in this video, I just want to talk about one of them, and that is automation. Because there is nothing easier than literally not having to do anything. Most people spend their money without thinking that much about it, but they only save their money when they remember to do it. That is not a great way to build a lot of wealth. So what I did instead is every week I set up an automatic transfer to send $500 from my bank account to my investment account. It literally took less than 1 minute to set up this automatic transfer, but it means that I'm saving $500 every single week without even thinking about it. That means I'm saving money on autopilot. And think about it this way. Now that I have this automatic transfer, I can save money without thinking about it. But if I want to stop that transfer, I have to do something to not save money. There's a bigger barrier to not saving money than to saving money. And that makes it a lot more likely that I'm going to save that money. And the other great thing about using automation is that saving money just gets built into your budget. Because once you're automatically saving, you don't just spend all of your money and then see what's left over to save. Instead, the money that you're going to save gets set aside at the very start. I think most people would be absolutely shocked how big of a difference this makes. But no matter what, your behavior will only change over the long term if you have the right reward to do it. So if you truly want your habits to stick and to become an extremely frugal person, you have to make your habits enjoyable. And the good news is that there are a lot of ways to do this. There are 3 strategies that I want to talk about in this video that I use to enjoy being frugal. Because most people don't think of being frugal as being fun, but it actually can be. And the first strategy is to make being frugal a game. The way I do this personally is I like to set challenges for myself. So a year or 2 ago, I set the challenge of trying to spend less than $150 per month on food. And I set the challenge every year to spend less than $20,000 per year. It's a lot easier to go without an expense when I'm challenging myself to go under a certain threshold. And one of the games that I recommend to everyone I work with is to just try to spend a little less money than you did last month. It could be just $1 less than you spent last month, but then the next month you have to spend less than you did the month before, and so on. Eventually, you see your expenses go down and down and down until all of a sudden, it turns out you're super frugal. If you can find ways to gamify being frugal, it's going to be so much easier to build it into your system. But second, almost everything is more enjoyable with a community. I consider myself extremely lucky that I've been able to get my best friend into all of this early retirement stuff. She's not as obsessive about it as I am, but that's okay. I still have somebody whom I can talk to about money, share updates with, and set goals with. Being extremely frugal is just so much more fun when you're doing it with other people. And at the very least, it's fun to celebrate your accomplishments with someone else who also values the same things that you do. And when things get tough, you at least have somebody to lean on. And honestly, this is a big reason that I created this YouTube channel. For me, this is a way to connect with like-minded people. Because being extremely frugal is rare. So if you can find your people who are also into it, even if it's just a little corner on the internet, it can be extremely motivating. And third, most people do not want to be extremely frugal for nothing. Most people are probably working towards something. For me, that's financial freedom. But for other people, that might be saving up for a big house, for college, for travel, or for anything else. Whatever it is that you're working towards, being extremely frugal will be a lot more enjoyable if you check in on your progress towards that goal. This one is really important, and it can make even hard things seem really fun. The best example of this for me was going to the gym. For a very long time, I just did not like working out. And I'd get motivated and work out for a month or 2, but then I'd get bored and I'd end up quitting. But eventually, I started to finally see progress. And as soon as I saw just a little progress, I became addicted to it. And the same thing happens with your money. For the first few months, even the first year, you might not feel like you're making any difference. But the results will slowly add up, and eventually, if you stick with it, you'll see progress towards your goal. And that can be extremely motivating. And even better, your progress will probably speed up with time. And this makes it a really beneficial cycle, as you just feel like you're going faster and faster and faster and getting closer to your biggest goals. So keep track of your progress, and when you hit your major milestones, it will make it so much more enjoyable. So if you want to become extremely frugal, you just have to build the habits that will get you there. And to build those good habits, you just have to make them exposed, exciting, easy, and enjoyable. But look, in this video, I only explained how to build habits. But what I haven't explained is which financial habits you need to build. And that's why you need to watch this video right here, where I break down some of the most powerful saving strategies.